What's up, everyone? This week on the pod, I have Big Frank, who played in Carrie Nation and also did Nemesis Records. It's a cool interview. We go through the early days of him working with Goldenvoice and some of those early shows, and then being at Fender's Ballroom for lots of that chaos. And then we go into Carrie Nation, and I go through a lot of my favorite selections out of the Nemesis catalog. He was a great interview, and I really appreciate his time. Please support the podcast by subscribing to it wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, please give it a like, rate it, review it, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to go the extra mile, you can go to patreon.com/185 miles south. And you put in $1, $3, $5, $10, whatever you can do to support the podcast monthly. And there's bonus content back there. Behind the paywall, we do extra podcasts, basically digging into like behind some of these episodes. So whoever we interview, we go through some of their discography, create a Spotify playlist. You listen along. We talk about some songs, talk about how we feel about the interview and so forth. Check that out, patreon.com/185 miles south. And let's get on with the show.
185 miles south, a hardcore punk rock podcast.
What's up, everyone? This week on the pod, I have the legendary Orange County hardcore hero, Big Frank. And he was the, would you say the owner or the runner of Nemesis?
Yeah, I owned it. I ran it.
Yeah, and then also of Carrie Nation fame.
Yep.
So, and we will get into all that. But as a veteran, I got to know, like, what year and how did you get into punk and or hardcore?
Well, I mean, I got into punk before hardcore. Basically, the Ramones was my gateway in.
Yeah.
And, I saw that first Ramones record in a record store and just was like, I was just taken in by the cover and, it just like went from there. And then there was a Tower Records in West Covina that I used to go to. And there was a girl there who was really into the LA punk scene, and she turned me on to all the LA bands like X and the Weirdos and the Bags and the Eyes, like all the Danger House, all the early Danger House bands. And I love the punk rock scene, but I was never into the drinking and drug culture of that seemed to embrace a lot of it, and so for me, hardcore really started, well, I guess before with the Bad Brains, but the one that, when I heard, Minor Threat's lyrics, that was pretty much it. I was like, oh, wow, okay. There are people that feel the way I do. I don't have to live this weird lifestyle that I'm not really a part of.
And are you around when the Minor Threat 7 inches come out?
Oh yeah.
And so how are they received? Like, is someone that's like already been into punk for a couple years in Southern California, and then Minor Threat Filler comes out? Like, what?
Oh man, okay. Here's the funny thing is, I think I heard the second 7-inch before I heard the first one. I'm pretty certain I heard. Yeah, I'm pretty certain that I heard one before I heard the other. I don't know how far apart they were released. Probably in the same year,
yeah,
right?
It's the same year. They're both 81, I think.
Yeah, so it was. I just happened, for whatever reason, this is like, oh God, no, No, that wouldn't have been. Yeah, it wouldn't have been pre-Zed Records. But do you know about Zed Records?
Yeah, I went several times, including the final week. I think I went like the very last day, maybe whenever it was like 90% off. That was a wild
God.
day.
Wow.
Yeah, but definitely not in the 80s, or I guess that would have been the tail end of the 90s, like 97-ish, 97, 98.
Yeah, I lost track because I moved away. I'm jumping all over the place. This is kind of getting, but yeah, I moved away before the ending happened.
Okay.
I don't know. Should I stay on topic?
No, well, we can talk about Zeds a little bit, but it was super cool. That's funny that you weren't there, but I remember like I think it was like the.
Well, I'm just trying to think of where I bought those 7-inches.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to remember where I bought them, and right offhand, I can't remember. I remember going into a record store in Colorado because I was dating someone, and for some reason we ended up in Colorado, and going into this Wax Trax record store, and they had multiple copies of the first 7-inch on different, like with the different colored sleeves.
Right.
I was like, how are these still? Why is no one buying these? Like these are like, and this is like when they were already kind of. I think they were still pretty collectible, and they just had them sitting on the shelf. But I don't know where I can't remember where I actually bought those first 2 7-inches. But yeah, I think I heard In My Eyes before I heard Filler. And then, it was immediately after. I was like, it's one of those things where as soon as you hear something, you're like, well, do they have anything else? And then I was like, oh, well, they have this other 7-inch. It actually came out first. I'm like, oh, well, I got to have that, and then, so it was pretty short-lived. And then I was just like, oh my God, this is it. You just, it wasn't, because I wasn't even to that point, the lyrics to like Ramones songs are pretty silly a lot of the time, I wasn't really into the lyrics. I was more into the driving passion of the music. But like when I heard Minor Threat, like they had the driving passion and the lyrics. So it was a perfect mesh for me.
Yeah, were you able to see them when they came out? And did they come out in 81 or 82?
Yeah, I saw a few. They played the Barn. Remember
in Riverside?
Yeah, no, it was. I think it was in Torrance.
Okay.
And it was the Dead Kennedys, Minor Threat, MDC, the Zero Boys, and the Detonators. I might miss the band in there, but I think that's all of them.
Jesus.
So yeah, that was an amazing show. And the thing was, I wasn't even a huge Dead Kennedys fan. The 2 bands I went there to see were the Zero Boys and Minor Threat.
Yeah, and so what was the cap on that place?
Oh God, I want to say under 500.
Okay, and was it packed to the brim?
Yeah, it was packed.
Okay.
Totally packed.
Yeah, and just so you know, I'm only 40, so I miss this stuff by a long time. So I always try
okay.
I always try to get the perspective of like, because all those bands are legendary now. Like,
right.
Was everyone there? Like, was MDC huge already? Were the Zero Boys huge? Was it everyone there to see everyone?
No, they were the only bands that were. Minor Threat definitely had a following, and Dead Kennedys were already well on their way to being, huge. But I would say, you had to really know your shit to know. Like I had not heard of MDC to that point. I didn't know Dave at that point. I didn't I didn't know much about them. And to be honest, I'm not even sure I saw their set that night. I definitely saw the Zero Boys though.
Yeah, and how were they?
They were amazing. That first record, I'm sure you've heard that first record.
Yeah, I have it.
Vicious Circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
So solid.
That's so good. Well, that rules. And then But what's it like getting into Minor Threat? Like when they come out, because what's next? Like nothing really ever touches it again. So like, what do you latch on to next?
Oh, geez. Well, I mean, there was Minor Threat, and then there was, well, the Misfits. The
Sure.
Misfits, were amazing too in their own way. Totally different thing. Totally different. Well, not. I wouldn't say totally different style, but in a way, different subject matter for sure.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
when was the first time that you were able to see them?
I saw them on the Walk Among Us tour.
Oh my God. And how was it? Do you remember where you saw them at?
Yeah, I saw them twice in one night.
Yeah.
I saw them. They played at the Whiskey,
Mm-hmm.
and that was an amazing show. And then I got word during the show that they were going to do a second show at Al's Bar. And so, like, we all piled in the car and raced over to Al's Bar. And that's become kind of a legendary show, too.
Yeah, and a legendary place. And so I've been in the Whiskey. What was the cap on Al's Bar?
Oh, Al's Bar was probably a couple hundred.
And,
Not very big.
And again, it was packed to the brim.
Yeah, it was pretty packed, but maybe not as packed as you'd think, because I think it was meant to be kind of a secret show.
Mm.
One of those things like, I kind of like when, I think when Minor Threat came out as a 5-piece, I think they played the Cafe de Grande, and I didn't get to see that show. I never saw them as a 5-piece. I only saw them with the original lineup.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. And now, were you were involved with Goldenvoice in some of the early '80s shows? Is that correct?
Pretty much all of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, what was your role there?
Well, I think I was brought on at first because I was. I think I was level-headed, and I could talk to people easily, and I could be kind of a peacemaker, and so I was brought. But I think I was brought on because I was pretty big. I was fairly, I could take care of myself. So, they brought me on for security reasons. But then when they realized I actually had a brain in my head too, then I got quite quickly, it moved up to, okay, you're the stage manager. Okay, now you're just, you're pretty much, everything that happens out here on the floor is up to you. It was pretty interesting time period.
Yeah, what year did you start doing that?
Early 80s.
Okay.
I want to say 80, 83.
Okay. And do you remember like one of the first or few shows that you did?
Well, the first show. Are you hearing that beeping?
I'm not.
Oh, okay, good. The first show would have been, well, at the time I was also writing. I was starting to do some writing for Flipside fanzine.
Okay.
And so, like, I don't know how, sometimes I would hear things, I had, everybody, it was through the grapevine, pre-internet and pre-cell phones, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
And, like, somehow we heard that GBH was going to be in town and they were going to be at this hotel. And so me and Al from Flipside, I'm not sure who else went, but I know it was me and Al, went there and interviewed GBH. And we immediately hit it off. And I got along with these guys great. After talking to them for a couple hours, I was like, well, where are you guys going from here? And it's like, oh, well, we're playing Santa Monica Civic, and then we're going to go on tour. And it's like, well, I want to go on the road with you guys. I had known them for 2 hours.
Yeah.
I was like, I just want to go on the road with you. And so I just jumped on the road with them for the next 2 weeks. And in the meantime, I went with them to the Santa Monica Civic Show and ran into Gary Tovar, who ran Goldenvoice. And like, this was my first exposure to these people. And he didn't even like me at first. Like, he was just like, who is this guy? Why is he here? You know, it's like, I'm with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody had to get their foot in the door somehow, I guess.
Sure. So, what was the Santa Monica what was the Santa Monica Civic Center like? What was the cap there, and what was like the vibe?
Big, kind of a union-run hall. Very had rules and regulations. Like compared to the Olympic Auditorium or Fender's or Perkins Palace, like those places where we made the rules. Santa Monica Civic had definite, they'd been there for, I don't even know how long they'd been there, at least into the 60s or 70s. And, so, they've had years of how to do it right and, run things what they thought was right, which they probably were right. But they were very structured, like they knew how to do it, as opposed to these other ones where we were just kind of figuring it out on the fly.
So would it hold like 2,000, 3,000?
Oh no, probably I want to say around 5,000.
Oh my God! And so GBH in '83, this would be them on the City Baby Attacked by Rats album, or City Baby's Revenge in that era. And are they?
I want to say before. It's definitely before City Baby's Revenge.
Okay.
I think it's City Baby Attacked by Rats. Yeah.
Okay, and they're drawing 5,000 people in Santa Monica?
For that show, they did. They
shit.
drew. Yeah. Now, I could be wrong with my numbers. I'm just guessing at the size. It might be, but it was definitely in the 3,000 to 5,000 range.
It's just mind blowing, like missing that generation and like thinking back that many people went to see like real legit like punk bands,
Yeah. It was, well, I think they, Goldenvoice was really good at loading up bills too.
Mm-hmm.
If they'd have the Circle Jerks on there who were, pretty big at the time, and, Bad Religion, who was not what they are now, but, they were still very popular, or Black Flag,
So what's the vibe in the crowd like? Is it like just a cross section of people? Because that's so many people that there has to be like just a bunch of normal dudes. Like not everyone is like a maniac.
Yeah, no, yeah. There was like, everything from surfers to Venice gang members and everything. Just the complete package of probably curious onlookers and dedicated fans.
Yeah, when does the gang thing like start becoming more prominent?
Probably a couple years later. There was, but yeah, I don't know. Before, yeah, I would say mid '80s.
Okay, so like these
mid '80s.
Like this time, this early time is like good vibes. Then kind of, it's just.
Well, I wouldn't say good vibes, but you definitely didn't want to piss off the wrong people.
Sure.
You had to have street smarts. You know what I mean? Like, okay, those guys, you don't mess with those guys. Okay, those guys over there. I don't know. I was always of the mind that I wanted to get to know a couple of them. Maybe if you knew a couple of the sensible ones, you could get through to some of the other ones, or at least keep the other ones off of you.
Yeah.
It's almost like a self-preservation tool. I mean, I can go clear back to junior high school and having members of the Crips walk onto my junior high school and beat the fuck out of somebody and then just like walk off the campus. And, you're a little kid. You just saw something straight out of a movie happen. And then like fast forward to a few months later, I'm riding my bike through this neighborhood, and this kid comes up and drop kicks me off my bike and just walks away with my bike. And I knew he was the brother of one of these Crips.
Sure.
And I saw the brother who had come onto the campus and punched the guy. And I go, "Hey man, I know who you are. I have nothing but respect for you. Can I please get my bike back? I got to go clear to the other side of town, blah, blah, blah." And he gave it back to me. So like, I don't know. I think from an early age, I've had self-preservation tools that maybe some people didn't have. I don't know.
No, I feel the same way. I'm not intimidated by that stuff at all. Like, one time I moved into this new apartment complex, and like there's like a full-on gang party, like, 3 apartments down. and I just told my roommate who I moved in with, it's like, I'm gonna go meet everyone. He's like,
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Like, you're gonna go over there? I was like, of course. They live here. Like, they don't want trouble with their neighbors, And I went, and it was funny because, like, everyone's out front partying and shit. And like, you gotta be like, "Oh, who are you?" I'm like, "I'm the neighbor. Like, I'm just here to meet whoever lives here." And kind of like the C parts, and you go inside the house, and the main dude's in there with like his grandma and shit, And I'm like, "Hey, I'm just your new neighbor. Came to say hi." I was like, "Oh, I appreciate that." And then he's my friend from there on, and no problems with anything. You got to do that, and you got to do it on day one.
Yeah. I agree. You just, you gotta, like, I don't know. You just, whatever you got to do. I mean, that, even up to more recently when, I lived in Sacramento, and, I could tell what, I'm really good. I guess from doing martial arts a good chunk of my life. Like, I was really good at, like, going into a room and not just walking in blindly, like seeing what's in the room, who's in the room, where are the exits. You know what I mean? Like, if you have to move quickly, I don't know, just more self-preservation tools.
No, I feel you. For me on that front, it was like after that Great White Fire,
Oh, you took it right out of my head. That's exactly, especially the knowing where the exits are.
Yeah. And then also just kind of sizing up the whole place, like, because so many people would have survived if they would have known that there was an exit like behind the stage, that a lot of people don't think about. And it's like, man, that's the way I'm going. But anytime I walk into a room where there's a lot of people, I'm like, okay, there's there, like, you're just thinking about how you can get out if shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but back to punk, like, I want to, you're such, you have such a good long story that I need these earlier dudes that were around to just kind of paint the picture of what it was like back then. So if you could pluck out like a couple standout of like that Goldenvoice era before I go into the Fenders era, just like
I can even go before the Goldenvoice. There was this guy. I'm sure you've heard of Circle One.
Sure.
John Macias.
Mm-hmm.
And he was putting on shows, and it was pretty close to where I lived. And, he was good friends with like Aggression, and he was good friends with a lot of bands, because he had a decent band, and for some reason he liked me. It was another one of those cases where, like, I made friends with John Macias. His friends hated me. All the people that hung around him did not like me. But for some reason, John liked me. So John would have me come to his shows and work with him, like run his stage. This was like right at the beginning of Goldenvoice, or, because there wasn't that many. It was this place called the T-Bird Roller Rink.
Okay.
And it was right on the edge of Whittier. And, it was pretty interesting. And then those, those early Goldenvoice shows were just, kind of just organized chaos, and kind of trying to find the eye of the storm, and then don't get caught in the tornado.
Yeah. Is there a barrier at the Goldenvoice shows?
Early on, no. Later on, yeah.
Okay.
yeah, it just kind of evolved. It's just like, early on, no barricades, just and the security was all handpicked pretty much by me,
Mm-hmm.
based on what I thought was, intelligence and strength and could handle a situation. I wanted people around me that could, help me if shit hit the fan. And luckily, I always had a pretty good group.
Yeah, but you're also thinking of the cooler mentality too, right? Like not just like beat it with force. Like if you can calm down the situation.
I mean strength, but strength with intelligence.
Right.
Like, I mean, if things go bad, I don't. It would be like if I had to go into war, who would you want next to your side? I'd want Delta Force next to my side, or a team of Navy SEALs. You know what I mean? They're smart, strong, and won't be beat.
Yeah, for sure.
As opposed to, just a bunch of dudes.
Yeah, I mean, I would take a prime Patrick Swayze, but what are you gonna do? Or Sam Elliott?
Yeah. Well, Sam Elliott, he'd talk his way out of anything.
Yeah, with that beautiful baritone voice.
Yeah.
So the scene, like because obviously, like if it's drawing like 3,000 people, 3 to 5 for like these huge shows, by the time like it kind of moves from like that, like the Santa Monica Civic to like the Fenders era, is it going down to 1,000 people or like
no? Those Fender shows would, I think that room had a capacity of, I want to say, under 1,000, and they would on any given night have way over 2,000 people in there.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it was just like the walls would be sweating.
Yeah,
it was pretty nuts.
Do you remember?
Hard to breathe.
Do you remember what year like that started?
Well, it was like 83, 84, 85. I want to say was the Olympic Auditorium heyday, and a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later, but like that was the chunk of it. And then once I forget why it happened, but the Olympics started like having less interest in doing those shows, and so Fenders just picked up the slack. And in between there was also a bunch of shows in Pasadena at Perkins Palace.
And what was that place like?
That was like an old theater, like, with like balconies and like those little alcoves on the sides that were like private seats, like were there at one point.
Okay, and then all the seats
it was like a traditional theater.
Got you, but the seats are ripped out?
The first few rows were like the orchestra pit.
Okay.
Basically, there was an orchestra pit.
Gotcha. So, like, some people would be like sitting in seats or like standing in seated areas, and then there'd be a pit down front.
You could definitely. There were seats, but the first, I don't know, 5 rows were taken out.
Yeah, that's super cool.
So there was an open floor, but Perkins Palace was like also that orchestra pit made it a real treacherous place, especially with people trying to stage dive and. I don't know if you've ever seen someone try to stage dive into an orchestra pit, but it doesn't usually go well.
That's great. So what was Fenders like?
Fenders was kind of crazy. It was in a not a great neighborhood in Long Beach. The police were kind of always on edge, because that was a rough area of Long Beach. There was, and I don't know I think like some of the gang stuff started to really get a foothold, and more in Fenders. Maybe it was there at the Olympics, but I didn't see it as much. But in Fenders, it was right in your face. Like, and it became harder to control.
How so?
Well, not everybody would listen to you.
Gotcha.
I mean, like some people would, but then some people wouldn't. And they just like walk away from you and just like, oh, okay, didn't get through to him. I don't know.
Do you think that like it was getting bigger, and so some of the people at shows were disconnected from the music? Like maybe that gang stuff was there in the early days, but like they were actual fans of the music, and now as it evolved, like there were some people that actually weren't in the music, were just there for like the chaos.
Oh yeah, definitely. There definitely were. And a lot of kids came from broken homes and stuff. And so they're looking for their own families. They're trying to find. The gangs are really attractive to somebody that hasn't had much family structure.
Yeah, and was there like a powerhouse gang, like, or were like they all kind of like equal? Like everyone like took their lumps some nights.
I wouldn't say they were equal, but I hesitate to name names and say one over the other.
Sure.
Yeah, because depending on who showed up and how many of whoever showed up, we could change the odds on any given night.
It's strange, like thinking about a band like Bad Religion though, and thinking that they had like an association with like a punk gang, like they were associated with the Lads, right?
Yeah, I suppose, but I don't think any of them were involved.
So it might have just been some of their buddies, and like it was kind of like
Yeah,
a loose
yeah.
affiliation.
Yeah, just friends, or they just happened to be, fans.
Gotcha. So what were some of the standout shows that you saw at Fender's?
At Fender's standout show. I always say that like one of the best standout shows was Iggy Pop. That was like I think he had the Soupy Sales' kids on in his band. That was a crazy punk show. You wouldn't think of all the shows I saw there that Iggy Pop would be the craziest, and it very well could have been.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, obviously, Slayer was crazy. Although I don't know if they played. I'm not sure if they played Fenders. I know we did the Olympic with them.
Okay.
But and then the Conflict show at Fenders was pretty legendary. I think that was partly because it was so well documented.
Right.
Like Flipside, that was actually my doing. I was like, you got to document this show, and like I got him to do it with multiple cameras, and like back when people weren't. It wasn't like now, like the 856, like Sonny
Sure.
does with dual cameras and stuff, and he has like a drum camera and all that. I mean, they didn't do that back then. Usually, everyone was one camera standing on the side of the stage, and Flipside was trying to push it, and trying to do stuff with multiple cameras and stuff. And I got him to go to that Conflict show, and thank goodness, because it's a legendary show now.
Yeah, so cool. On the Carry Nation 7-inch, it says like 85 to 89. Does Carry Nation start in 85?
The funny thing was, Carry Nation actually started before No for an Answer.
Mm.
We had a rehearsal, and it was me and Dave Mello from Uniform Choice.
Okay.
I forget what we were doing, but we got invited, and he goes, "Oh, these guys want to jam with me." I'm like, "You want to go too?" So it's weird because like that first, it was basically just a rehearsal in '85, I think, and then nothing came of it, and then they turned into No for an Answer.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, so I guess Carry Nation wasn't going anywhere. And then after No for an Answer went down, then Dan wanted to do this project, which, got much, he just wanted it to be a project. Of course, I wanted it to be the biggest band ever.
Sure.
I wanted to be a popular band. I wanted to do what I'd seen my heroes do.
Yeah, well, I mean, the songs are epic, and if you think about it, in the 7-inch comes out in '89, but like, there's a lot of blueprint hardcore stuff there, like really kind of milking like build-ups and so forth. It would go on to be like, like a blueprint for like a Strife type band, that blew up in the '90s. Like, you guys really do that build-up type stuff really well when no one else is kind of doing that stuff. '89. Go ahead.
That was a fun time.
Yeah, I think that's like really standout stuff. But that would be jumping ahead to '89. But also like, so the year before is when you start Nemesis, 1988. What is the impetus? Like, why do you want to go that route and start a label?
Well, I'd seen a couple of my friends. Well, Dan had Workshed Records. Dan O'Mahony had Workshed Records. And I had another friend who had started this label called Sympathy for the Record Industry.
Sure.
And he had put out like 500 records, like some crazy amount of records. And it was just like, well, this sounds fun. And it's a good way to like, make a mark. And then I started having bands that were coming into Zed all the time. And they're like, man, I wish we could get somebody to put this out. And then I kind of figured out how Dan was doing it. So then I started using the same sort of blueprint for running my own label.
Yeah, so your first release is Visual Discrimination, Step Back and Listen, correct?
Yeah.
And I love that record.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
Yeah, Those Drugs is one of the greatest hardcore songs ever.
Awesome.
I love it. So how do you come across this band?
I came across everybody at Zed. That was like the hub.
Sure.
Everybody, because if I didn't know you, I probably wanted to know you. And, if you were a fairly popular band, I wanted to carry, at the very least, your demo. Demos were a big thing. People would bring in these demos and just, instead, and just sell the shit out of them.
So cool. Yeah.
And so Visual Discrimination basically had this whole album was done. Like, it was recorded and all the artwork was done. I think somebody else might have been like slated to put it out and they didn't.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I think I can put it out. And so they're like, oh, okay, that'd be cool. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. Then once I realized that a formula that would work, it worked until it didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, because Nemesis is super prolific. You did a ton of stuff. But let's talk about this first record. So how does it feel to go through the whole process and like get the LP in your hands the first time? Like knowing that this is something like you created?
I don't know. I think I was so busy at the time, I had no real inkling to admire it. I was just like busy, I mean, I worked basically 7 days a week. If I wasn't working at Zed Records, I was working, and basically I wasn't just working at Zed Records. I was running Zed Records because the owner's son, he was kind of being more low key. So like he was letting me do everything. So I was basically running Zed Records, running my own record label out of Zed Records. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was working concerts day and night,
So rad. You're like
so
fully
I
immersed.
didn't really have time to think about what I was doing. It's only when you like get, 20, 30 years out of it, and then you look back and go, oh yeah, I guess I did do something.
But are you able to see like what it does for this band? Like to be did they have a demo before the LP?
I think they did.
Okay. But are you able to see like what their popularity is like pre and post LP?
Yeah, I mean, but the it's hard for me to gauge it now
Mm-hmm.
because I was comparing. I was comparing at the time. I was like, I wanted, if Revelation can do this, well, I can do it sort of. Maybe I can't do it as good as Jordan, but like I can do it well enough. And so I was trying to compete with who I saw as like Victory or Revelation, I guess, or even smaller. Like Dan wasn't really. Dan was just kind of putting out his friends' bands,
Mm-hmm.
whereas I started getting these ideas. I wanted to put out a band from every major city, and then I wanted to put out bands from all over the world. It just never hit its full fruition.
Yeah, well, I want to go through some of the releases because I love a lot in the Nemesis catalog.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
so but VD, what was this band like in their prime? And like were they as wild as some of the rumors are?
What rumors? Like,
I heard a rumor once that they beat up Chain of Strength. But then I talked to Ryan Hoffman and he said that never happened.
I don't think that's ever happened.
Okay.
I don't think.
I hope not.
I don't think that.
But just that they were wild characters like that, like kind of scrappy.
Their singer was definitely scrappy. Jeff Banks was a trained boxer at some point, but that was much later. That was more when he got into the whole chorus of disapproval
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah, I really like this band a lot, and I think
that's awesome.
I think of their comeback, like they did that comeback 7-inch in like the '90s. Jeff wasn't in the band anymore, but Tim was still singing, and that is like one of the greatest 7-inches. Like especially for like a comeback later. Did you ever hear that thing?
I'd be honest and say I don't think I have.
Oh, you got to look it up. It's called Serial Killers, I think, and it's like it might have come out in '97. It is blazing. Awesome hardcore. It is so
That's
good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tim's a great singer. Did you ever hear the stuff he did with Final Conflict?
I didn't realize he did anything with them. No.
He did an EP with Final Conflict, and man, it was a solid record.
I'm gonna buy it on Discogs tonight. How about that?
Yeah, I don't know what. I wish I could tell you what it's called, but I can't.
No, I'll find out. I'll go down that rabbit hole.
Okay.
So next after VD, the other one I plucked out was Reason to Believe. You do the Next Door 7-inch, and this thing is perfect melodic hardcore. I mean, I love it.
I would agree.
Yeah. How did you feel about it at the time? And then it was also like, was it like a split release with Soul Force? What was that all about?
No. Soul Force did their run, and they were done with them. And like, I think it was another case of they just. I just think they had run its course, and I think they wanted to do more. And I was like, well, let's do more. Let's re-release it, and because I think the Soul Force run was pretty limited. Like I don't even know how many they did. I want to say they only did like 500 copies,
and then you picked it up because you didn't want it to be out. And you did the LP too in '90, and I love the LP, the When Reason Sleeps, Demons Dance.
Yeah, I love that record too.
Oh my god, I love it so much. And I actually got really lucky with that, and I think the second VD, I found the test presses at Lou's Records in San Diego probably 20 years ago.
That's wild.
Yeah, and so I was able to sell the Reason to Believe one. Not that I wanted to, but I had to. Well, actually, I guess I didn't have to. I'm a huge Tom Waits fan, and there was a Tom Waits test press on eBay, and I basically sold this for the same amount that I was going to buy the Tom Waits one for, so I basically traded for it. But
oh yeah, well, that sounds like a good trade.
Yeah, I had to do that. But yeah, that was one of the best record scores of my life. I remember like, oh my god, I just got VD and Reason Weave test presses for $4 each. Like, this is fucking amazing.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was so cool. Did you and Dano did you beef over who's going to do the Carry Nation 7-inch?
Oh no, not at all. Not at all.
You just let
It was
him have
always
it.
going to be on Workshed.
Okay.
Yeah, it was never going to be on Nemesis.
Okay.
There was never even any discussion. It was always going to be. I mean, Carry Nation got together to be a project band on Workshed.
Okay.
Like it was never met. We didn't get together as a band. Like, okay, we're going to play and we're going to tour and here's blah blah blah. You know, everything other than the 7-inch was pretty much like any T-shirts, or if you've seen any pictures of like the huge backdrop we used to have, and like that was all me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you do get a Carry Nation song though on your label because you do the No Control Country Club 7-inch.
Yeah. I could too.
Yeah.
We're on the East Meets West too.
Yes, that's right.
One was Sick of It All and Killing Time.
Yeah, what a killer 7-inch to do Sick of It All and Killing Time. That's amazing.
I know. I was just like, I had to document that one. It was like I had gotten all these really cool bands to come out. I mean, that's the only time Vision or Killing Time has ever played the West Coast.
Oh, crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't realize that. But talking about the No Control the Country Club, this is so cool because do you think that like when Fenders was slowing down, kind of the scene shifted over to the country club? Because it seems like it got really prolific, and there was a ton of stuff
it
there.
did.
Okay,
It definitely did.
yeah, and this is a killer show to document. Bad Religion Instead, VD, and Carry Nation, 1990.
Yeah, that was the first Carry Nation show too.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Were you nervous? Were you nervous before you played?
No, honestly, I think I'd been on the stage so long that it was just like I just took it a step further and put a guitar around my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just like it, and I didn't look. I wasn't like looking for. I wasn't looking at people's faces, going, "Oh, I like us," or you know. I knew we had good songs, and I just played them.
Yeah, so cool.
I just tried to play them tight, you know, and that was enough for me.
Do you have any other memories of that show?
I remember Kevin instead going, "Wow, you guys are you're pretty good." He's like, I'm like, "Well, thanks," you know. But it was, I remember Dan saying he only wanted to do that one show.
Okay.
And then one show turned into 2 shows, and then turned into a bunch of shows. And a year later, you know, we had our last show.
Yeah.
It only lasted a year.
Oh, that's crazy. But you got some good documentation on that band. I was
Oh yeah.
I was Googling around on you guys. There's like a little 15-minute documentary on YouTube, which is pretty rad.
Oh, with me and Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen that.
Yes.
That was done by this guy, Mario, who was a friend of Igby. I don't know if you know who Igby is.
I do. I know Igby.
Oh, okay, yeah. He's a friend of Igby's, and he made that little quick Carry Nation documentary.
So cool. Yeah. So also going back to 89, you do the Vision in the Blink of an Eye LP. And
Yeah.
so how do you come across them? And this is a really underrated hardcore LP, I think.
Oh, I agree. You know, I think it's more appreciated now than it was then.
Okay. And still underappreciated now. I mean, like these guys they're touching like some melody. It's really catchy. It's a good hardcore LP. How do you meet these guys and how do you do the LP?
I met them through the guy who was helping me do my distribution. This guy, Kane Boychuk, who ended up being Headhunter Records. He ended up working with Cargo, but he basically he's like, hey, these guys from New Jersey, Vision, they're looking for a label. He did this with me for a couple bands, and Vision was the first one. I believe Vision was the first. I think Vision was first, and then Offspring.
Okay.
but they were both like Kane didn't know what to do with them. He's like, "Do you want to put them on your label?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll put them on my label."
Yeah, killer. And you loved the LP back then.
Yeah. Oh, this is going to be a great record, you know.
Yeah.
I always thought I would do. I thought I had a blueprint that I thought I could do more than I did.
But how so?
I just thought I could sell more.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, I didn't understand why I couldn't sell more. You know, but
well,
I don't know.
You might have said it yourself, because if they only toured out here once, you know that is not that prolific.
No. I mean, the hardest working band, you know, probably on my label would have been Instead, you know, and they toured all the time, you know, and they sold a ton of records.
Yeah, and that's who I'm getting to next, because the Instead will make the difference 7-inch, one of the greatest hardcore records of all time.
Yeah, and some of the nicest guys you'll ever meet too. You know, just genuinely nice people. You know, so easy to work with. Like,
yeah, so cool. I mean, I didn't meet him until years later when they did the reunion stuff. But but that 7-inch is like, man, to a song. I remember one of my bands we played this house show in South Central in probably 97, 98. And there was 3 bands, like there was 4 bands playing and 3 of us covered Instead. It was so funny. Yeah. But I mean, that 7-inch just holds up. The next thing I got is, obviously you do the Offspring, the first LP. And and so this came to you the same way as the Vision, but when you hear this, how do you feel about it, and like, do you think that they have the potential to like turn into what they turned into?
Oh God, no! If I would have known that, I would have done so much. That would have been like, oh man, that was my friend that had sympathy for the record industry. I mean, he basically made a career out of those White Stripes records, those early White Stripes records.
Right.
And he's like, "This is your chance. This is your chance now to have your White Stripes moment with these guys." When they broke, I was like, "I don't have them under contract. I don't know what kind of contract you had, but I didn't." The funny thing about Offspring was they were the only band in all the bands I ever released that actually made me sign like a 3-year, like we're on your label for 3 years and then we're done.
And they get the rights after 3 years.
Yeah.
Huh.
So by the time they broke, I had no rights to them anyway. So like, they knew something I didn't know. Like, they had a vision of where they wanted to go, and it just wasn't working at the time when I was trying to do it. And I did try. I tried to push them. I put them on what was arguably one of the biggest punk shows back then. It was like Fugazi, Offspring, and 411 at the Hollywood Palladium, sold out.
Wow.
So I did try to push Offspring, but to hear Brian talk, you hear Brian talk, he'd say I didn't try and do anything for the band. I was just like, oh, that's not really true. I tried really hard. You just weren't popular when I had you.
Right.
And I didn't have the means like Epitaph to promote a band, I don't think I'm going to get a video on MTV through Nemesis.
Sure, and it's also, you're 4 or 5 years early. Like, stuff wasn't as popular right then. Like, that was...
Right.
I wasn't around, so I shouldn't speak on it. I should ask you.
No, but you're right.
But
you're
like,
right.
89 is a weird year for punk, right? Like, straight edge hardcore is like kind of popping, but for like punk, 89 is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. The funny thing too is back then, like in that short period where Carrie Nation was going, I mean, we were packing clubs every time we played, and Offspring couldn't get 30 people into a show at that time.
Sure.
They, you know, but that's just
Yeah,
funny how.
Yeah, it's funny how that plays. I really like this early stuff though, and I like it. The Reason to Believe and this Offspring stuff sound really similar to me. And there's nothing really after that ever sounds like this stuff again. So I kind of have a warm spot for it. But
Yeah, I thought
go ahead.
I thought Ignite tried to a little bit in the early,
Yes, they have a little bit of that, like where it's melodic, but it's like a little bit of a darker melody. I can totally see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But Ignite really leaned into the speed. And this stuff it's a little more of like up tempo, mid tempo.
Right.
So a little different. 89
Yeah.
also another 7-inch that I absolutely love. The Against the Wall Identify Me 7-inch.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah. What makes it interesting, you think?
Well, the interesting part was there was a band on one of the live 7-inches I did called Pushed Aside,
Sure.
and the singer of Pushed Aside was the bass player in Against the Wall, Randy.
Randy Johnson.
Yes, Randy Johnson. Yeah, that's him. And I was going to put out the Pushed Aside 7-inch, which I wanted to go in and record all their songs. I wanted new recordings and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, something went sour. Like, I don't know what happened. And like, I didn't end up doing the Pushed Aside 7-inch. And then all of a sudden, Madrid comes at me with the Against the Wall. I'm like, oh, okay. Of all the people, like, Madrid was like connected to all these other labels. And I was like, none of these other guys wanted. Oh, I don't know why they wouldn't want to do this.
Right. Yeah.
So I was kind of baffled, but really happy I got to do it because it was a really good 7-inch.
Yeah, it's a good record. And did the Pushed Aside ever even come out? I think that they just did a demo.
It came out on Indecision.
Way later though. Not until the 2000s.
Way later. And it was just they just took the demo and put it on a 7-inch.
Right. But way after the fact.
Oh, way after the fact.
Yeah, okay. That's right. In 1990, this is super cool. You do the Uniform Choice demo. And I was wondering, you do a double 7-inch. Why do a double 7-inch instead of like an LP?
Because I thought it would be that gets back to my friend with sympathy for the record industry. He was always doing these weird formats. Like instead of doing a 7-inch record, he did a 5-inch record. Instead of doing, you know what I think? I think part of it too was I realized you could fit if you did it right and did it at the right speed, you could fit a whole LP onto a couple 7-inches because I'd seen it with bootlegs.
Right.
Like some of those out of print bootlegs would come out and they come out on 7-inches rather than LPs.
Yeah, we're 7-inches.
I just thought it would be cooler.
It is super cool. It is. It's super cool.
I like the whole idea of the gatefold. I like the idea of, using that iconic image on the front. And it's just, I think I was just trying to be creative and think out of the box. I didn't just another boring LP. No, let's do it as a double 7-inch.
Yeah. Was it hard to track that stuff down at that time?
This is the funny thing. It was right around that same time period where I was Dave Mello, who was the bass player in Uniform Choice, was actually my right hand man, like my assistant when there was a short period after Goldenvoice when I worked for this other company, and Dave Mello was my assistant. And this one time, I forget, for whatever reason, I was in his house, and I went in the closet, and there's these reels for the Uniform Choice demo. I was like, you have the reels for that? He's like, yeah. And like, of course, my light bulb went off immediately.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we should release that. That's never been released on a record, And so I was able to. I was very lucky.
That's so rad. And then how did you feel like, I think maybe 5 years ago, there was like a even more original Uniform Choice demo that came out like before Dubar sang?
Oh, I did hear something about that. Like, yeah, the pre-Dubar recordings. Yeah, I don't know.
They're like a totally different band though, right?
Yeah, it's a totally different band. It's not the Uniform Choice you want to remember. I don't know, in my opinion.
Can you speak a little bit on them? Because I'm always kind of curious. Like, what was their impact? Like, coming out the gate, like, do they do a demo and they blow up and they're super influential, or are they influential after Screaming for Change comes out? Can you just speak on that band a little bit?
I can say that they put on a really good live show, and they toured quite a bit, and they had those aspirations of wanting to be a big band. But as far as doing the demo and blowing up, I don't know at what point. I think it probably had more to do with me putting them on good shows. Like, I put them on some Olympic Auditorium shows, some good Fender shows. I think the combination of they had good songs and they had a good live show, I think that just built it up.
Yeah, and did they have to take a lot of shit, or were they like kind of universally loved? Because they are a pretty direct in your face band, and playing some mixed punk shows, you could see how they could stand out.
Yeah, no, they didn't really have any trouble. They were, Dubar was a big, imposing physical presence. Pat Dyson was a big, like, both those guys are like guys that probably could have had college careers in baseball and football, or they weren't like to be taken lightly. Like, they would, you swung on them, they were going to swing back.
Right. Yeah.
So, and Vic wasn't small either. The only small one would have been Dave, and there was more than enough to back him up.
Sure. Yeah, so cool. You do a 7-inch for a band called Fishwife, and that just stands out. I got one of my best friends is this guy named Micah, and he works at a restaurant in Portland called the Fishwife. So I just got to I just got to ask about this band. What are they all about? This has been on my my Discogs want list forever, but I'm waiting to buy it for $1 or $2.
Oh, so. Right. I wish I had an extra copy. I'd just give it to you, but I don't think I do.
I'll get it eventually.
Yeah. I'll look through my stuff because there's a couple records that I have doubles of.
Okay.
But if I have one, I'll send it to you. But Fishwife is part of the San Diego scene.
Okay.
Which, this was me in my head thinking, well, Seattle is blowing up. Well, San Diego's got a good scene too. I'm going to help San Diego blow up. So I started putting out these bands like Pitchfork, who turned into Rocket from the Crypt, and all that. And then bands like Fishwife was just friends of those guys.
Okay, cool.
So it was basically actually, what's the band now with the guys from Rocket? It's called, God dang it.
I would never be able to tell you.
Yeah, I'm just drawing a blank on it. But it's the band who is now, it's basically two guys from Pitchfork. It's Rick and John from Pitchfork with Gar, who I think was in Fishwife.
Okay, that's cool. So someone from Fishwife is still active. That rules.
Yeah.
That rules. Now, you do have your Sympathy for the Record Industry White Stripe 7-inch in 1990 because You do,
Huh?
well, no, you do a super early Brujeria record.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
How cool is that? You do Brujeria
yeah.
Demonico in 1990.
That was just cool because the guy who gave it to me, like, I don't think I even listened to it. I don't even think I just said, yeah, you're doing it. Yeah, I wanted to. I'll put it out. Like I just sight unseen. Same thing with chorus. I didn't have to hear a song. I just I knew if Banks and Banks and Isaac were going to do it together, it was going to be good.
Right. Yeah, it's such a, when I was going through your catalog, I was like, what? Is it the same band? Like, oh, okay. It is. What the fuck? So super cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Brujeria. They they were so funny because people really thought like that they were like Mexican drug lords, and they were really made up. Like it wasn't this fake band; it was like this Mexican death metal band or something.
Right. Yeah, so cool.
I even had Steve Albini. Steve Albini.
Of course.
Yeah, yeah. He called me out of the blue one night. He's like, "What's the deal with Brujeria? Like, are those real guys, or are they just people?" Like, I get a random phone call in the middle of the night from Steve Albini asking me questions about Brujeria.
That just makes doing all of Nemesis totally worth it right there.
Yeah, it's pretty random and bizarre.
Yeah, so cool. Another one I plucked out was, I love the Iceman Cometh 7-inch. Just
Oh,
just for Choke's banter alone, all the 7-inch, like you capturing that when he was like, "Yeah, all these old men like cleared you out of the pit." I don't remember what he says, but something like that. So good.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
how good was Slapshot?
They were they're amazing. They were so good.
Yeah.
The funny thing about that show was, though, it was packed. It didn't make a penny. Like, it got me basically banned from the whiskey for years because I put on a show that didn't sell alcohol.
Yeah, they
And
sold
then
3 beers.
I had all the stage diving and craziness. They didn't want to deal with that, so I kind of put one over on them, and I paid the price actually for doing it.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah.
I got a good 7-inch out of it, but I actually, that was the beginning of the end of that promoter I was working with too.
Yeah, I would argue great 7-inch. I think it's fucking awesome. I mean, it's just what you've done on some of these 7-inch comps is like just capture a snapshot in time. And
I wish I could have done more.
Yeah, I mean, you're curating these things is insane because all the bands actually really stand the test of time. Like normally when you look at comps, it's like, half the bands have some merit and half the bands it's like, well, they were something, but it's like when you do these 7-inch comps, it's like literally all bangers. It's crazy.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. 91, you do chorus, The Truth Gives Wings to Strength LP, as well as the chorus 7-inch. How was this band received when they came out?
Fairly, I think in the beginning, it depends on who you talk to. I mean, I've read interviews with Isaac where he says that Epitaph was after him and stuff, and for some reason they decided to go with me, and I don't know. I don't think there was that. It's hard for me to judge. Honestly, they were popular. I think they were more popular later, though. I think they it's hard for me to have a clear picture in my head of. It's funny because I just remembered trying really hard to put out the records and was really excited about it. And yeah, now I can remember. Now it just came to me. there was a show at Toe Jam with Chorus, and that was just insanity. Packed room, not that big, 100, 200 tops, but like everybody singing the words and just like really into it.
Yeah. Does any of this stuff like make you feel really good? Like when you see like a room like that, even if it's just 200 people, I mean, that's a lot of fucking people. If you think about it, like if there's 200 people motivated to like pack up and sing along, and that like you're the guy that made this happen, maybe they would have had the record come out somewhere else, but maybe it wouldn't have been as big. Like you are part of the catalyst of what makes this happen. Like, does that ever sink in? And how does it make you feel, if anything?
I never really thought about it like that. I don't know. I just did what I did at a time when it seemed like it needed to be done.
Yeah.
And like, it's nice to look back. I mean, like when Patrick from Reaper Records wanted to put out my book, I was like flattered because I liked Reaper Records. Sure. I liked Reaper Records before I ever met Patrick or even knew him. And so, like, the fact that he says, my label influenced his label, I was like, whoa, well, that's a compliment. Because that was, like, the first time I'd really thought about it in probably 10 years. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, well, he has great taste. I mean, almost everything he puts out is insane.
Yeah, I agree.
The last one that I plucked out that I love, I absolutely love this LP, is the Billingsgate No Apologies LP.
Oh yeah, yeah.
How did that come about? Because they were Chicago, not Minneapolis, correct?
Yeah, they were Chicago. That was when I was trying to get a band from every major city.
Sure.
And I don't think I ever got a New York City band. I should have, if I would have. It just makes me mad because I could have released that. There was a live Agnostic Front show that I put on, and I should have released that as a 7-inch because that would have been a really good one.
Yeah.
But getting back to Billingsgate, I had heard the 7-inch. I think was on Victory.
Yes.
Yeah, and I thought that was a great 7-inch, and so I reached out to them. Do you want to do a record? I'm pretty sure I reached out to them and asked them if they wanted to do I don't know if I asked them if they wanted to do an LP but I think I reached out to them and it just kind of blossomed.
Yeah, I love this record. It's like, I like the 7-inch okay, but then this LP, like, they really lean into like that Verbal Assaulty style.
Yeah. I really like that early Verbal Assaulty style too. I mean, probably you can tell by the bands I was releasing, like with Reason to Believe, and it had like that melody, and
Sure. Yeah, but like not glossy, but like they do have that melody. Yes. Yeah. So good. Yeah, and Billingsgate, a couple of those guys, they went on to do the band Dillinger 4. They're actually like my favorite band.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, I think it's 2 of the guys. They're in Dillinger 4, like still to this day. So.
Oh wow, that's awesome to know.
And that band like rips. They kill it. Like they're my favorite band, legitimately. So.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Is there any records that stand out for you that you think that I didn't touch on?
The only ones I could think of were I did Hunger Farm, which really wasn't a hardcore record. It was more of an alternative sounding. And I thought they had great promise. But it's just a case of the right place at the right time. And, some of these people had vices that got the better of them. And, it just doesn't work out.
Where were they from?
I also thought Point Blank.
Okay.
Point Blank, who was on the East Meets West show.
Sure.
And they turned it to Bonesaw.
Okay.
I thought they were amazing. They were so good. They were so good at that East Meets West show. They brought they somebody worked at a toy store, and they got like cases of Mad Balls. You remember Mad Balls?
Yeah, totally.
They had like cases of them, and they started a Mad Ball fight during the show at that East Meets West show, and it was so crazy. And their singer Chris was just a really underrated singer. They were an underrated band, I thought.
I'll revisit that. That's so cool.
Start with Point Blank though.
Okay.
They were they're good band.
Cool. What happened? Like, why does Nemesis end?
Nemesis ended because I couldn't get the distribution to pay me what they owed me. I wanted to go completely independent. I realized when I first started, I had distribution with this guy, Kane, and he helped me acquire relationships with recording studios and manufacturing studios and whatnot. But then when he moved to Cargo, he kind of like sold his soul to, I don't know that he sold his soul, but he moved on to a corporation where he couldn't make his decision wasn't the final say. Like it had to run through another bunch of filters, and these people didn't like me for some reason. I was like, I've got this label that I think is worthwhile, and I want to do a lot more, but you guys got to be upfront with me. And they just never were. And I wasn't the smartest businessman. I had no business savvy. It was never. I didn't start out with Nemesis to try and build a corporation. I just wanted to put out my friend's band.
Sure.
And then I got some ideas about, well, if I'm going to keep doing this, maybe I can do this and this. And I tried a few different things. But when I lost control and I just couldn't get what I felt I was owed to break free, then at the same time I was tattooing. And I had just acquired an apprenticeship with a really well-known tattooer. And so then I just kind of let the label go.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is if that was a smooth transition, or if, like, when you started your tattooing career, did you start doing stuff like before Nemesis ended? And have you always been way into doing art? Because you're not just a tattooer, you do paintings and so forth as well.
Yeah. No, I've always liked dabbling, but obviously once you start tattooing, you're drawing all the time. So I just had to take it to a much more serious level.
Yeah, and what was that like? Kind of like transitioning out from being
bittersweet.
Yeah,
bittersweet.
Because you go from being fully immersed in music to kind of like to do an apprenticeship. Like it's like an internship. You're starting from scratch in a new field.
Yeah, and I was kind of let the music go for a couple of years. Well, I had to, because you have to kind of dedicate all your time to learning your craft and what you're doing. So
sure, you have to fully immerse into that. But that's one of the But that's one of the great things about you, though, Frank. Is I don't know you personally, but when people talk about you, one of the good things that people always say is he's someone that never like stopped loving hardcore. So like maybe in your head you think you stepped away from it for a couple of years, but you weren't like someone you weren't a tourist and dropped out or anything.
No, I didn't. Yeah, I just meant I just didn't go to shows for. Actually, I did go to shows, but I would just kind of, I wasn't as involved. I went from being fully involved in almost every aspect of a scene to just kind of hanging out, and that was okay.
Yeah,
I was okay with that.
Yeah. So you really took to tattooing though, and you've been doing it since. What is like the most satisfying part of that?
The most satisfying part of it is when you get someone that you've never maybe met before, and you guys just vibe on every level, from the idea he has to your execution of it to, like making a friend, like going from not knowing somebody to making someone a friend. I don't know. I think that's, being able to do what I know I'm capable of doing too. Really not trying to hold me back, just like believing in my vision.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah, I mean, I've loved all my tattoo artists like to a man, so
Yeah.
it's an interesting relationship, right? It's like it's kind of like a lot of your best friends, that you don't have to talk to for a long time, but there's always like a weird connection,
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
super cool.
Especially now with social media, and you can reach out to pretty much anybody you want to.
Yeah, a little easier to stay in touch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, is there anything that you think I missed, Frank, or do you feel pretty good about this?
No, I'm fine with this. If you're fine with it, I'm good with it.
No, I love it. I think you did a great job of like painting a picture of like the early days, and I wanted to nerd out and speak on some of this Nemesis stuff that I love. And I think you did it.
I'm really glad you loved it. I mean, that's what I like hearing now, is like how many people did like what I did. Because at the time, like, I was all over the place. I mean, when you look back, my musical taste was here, there, and everywhere. I mean, and it probably would have gotten stranger if I would have kept going.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I
even released a comic book. I released a comic book on Nemesis.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's so bizarre and random.
Yeah. No, I mean, like the curation of the stuff that you did is because I missed it, obviously. So, like, when someone can discover a catalog years after you've stopped doing it and really appreciate and love a lot of like these pieces that you did, I mean, you were able to curate timeless music. And
thank you.
Yeah, I think that should be the point of the label, right? Like, that's why, Rev catalogs and different labels, Discord, of course, BYO, like these labels are timeless because they chose the right bands that never get old,
Yeah.
Like I still.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was lucky, I think, in a lot of respects too, but I do think there was intelligence behind my luck. It wasn't total luck.
This can't be total luck. Anyway.
No.
I mean, at least you were warm enough to like be able to make friendships with people that were talented and creative, and you had the wherewithal to like see a project through. A lot of people can't do that.
That's true. It's very true. I've been in my share of bands that I couldn't get past one or two rehearsals.
But you got a record out. You got a record out of one of your bands.
Yeah. At least I did do that.
Yeah, so that's rad. But yeah, I really appreciate your time, Frank.
No problem.
Do you feel like you've been well represented?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's all good.
Cool. Yeah, all right. So I really appreciate your time, and thanks so much.
All right, man. It was good talking to you. I'll look for that Fishwife record. If I find it, I will text you or call you and get your address and mail it to you.
Appreciate it. But then I'm going to just send it to my friend Micah, so we might want to just cut me. We might want to just cut me out.
All right.
Yeah, man. Okay, I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.